Stop calling it self-awareness. You're rehearsing disasters that haven't happened yet. Most people who overthink don't believe they're overthinking. They believe they're being responsible, prepared, self-aware. The brain loves this trick because it makes anxiety feel productive. You sit in the shower replaying a conversation from Tuesday. You rewrite an email 3 times before sending it. You imagine 6 versions of a meeting that hasn't happened yet. It feels like work. It feels like growth. It feels like you're protecting yourself from future pain. But self-awareness and overthinking produce different results, even when they look identical from the inside. One creates clarity. The other creates exhaustion. And the problem is that your brain struggles to tell the difference while it's happening, because both activities are built from the exact same materials: memory, attention, imagination, with only one thing separating them: where they end. Self-awareness ends with understanding. Overthinking ends with another lap around the same track, and that track almost always starts with 2 words. What if? The first sign those 2 words are running your life is simple. You prepare for conversations more than you actually participate in them. You practice arguments while brushing your teeth. You rehearse explanations while driving to work. By the time the real conversation arrives, you've already lived through it 20 times in your head. Then it happens for real, lasts 4 minutes, and sounds nothing like the rehearsal. The second sign shows up after the event instead of before it. Your body leaves the room. Your brain stays behind. A friend says, "See you later," and 3 hours later you're staring at the ceiling wondering if they sounded annoyed. A manager replies with 1 word, "Thanks," and you spend the train ride home trying to calculate whether the period at the end of that sentence meant disappointment. Your brain becomes a detective investigating a crime nobody reported. This happens because uncertainty is physically uncomfortable, and an uncomfortable feeling without a clear cause doesn't just sit there quietly. In 1962, psychologist Stanley Schachter and researcher Jerome Singer published a study called Cognitive, Social, and Physiological Determinants of Emotional State, and found that people don't simply feel an emotion. They go looking for a reason to explain it. Give the brain discomfort with no obvious source, and it will write a story to fill in the blank. Most of those stories begin with what if. The third sign is that ordinary decisions start carrying weight they were never built to hold. Picking a restaurant feels like choosing a university degree. Buying a laptop feels like choosing a spouse. You open 12 browser tabs, watch 7 reviews, read 40 comments, and then buy nothing. Someone using real self-awareness gathers information and moves. An overthinking brain gathers information because moving feels dangerous. The fourth sign is quieter, and it hides inside something that looks like love. You start confusing thinking with control. If you turn the problem over enough times, maybe you can outsmart the embarrassment, the rejection, the loss before it happens. A mother watches her teenager drive off alone for the first time, and her brain builds a movie on the spot. Rain on the road, a missed stop sign, a phone call from a hospital. None of those images make the drive any safer. But the brain treats worry like a payment made toward protection, as if fear itself could buy insurance. The fifth sign is that your imagination only ever points one direction, toward danger. You never catch yourself asking, what if the interview goes well? What if they actually like me? What if moving cities turns out to be the best decision you've ever made? The brain calls this being realistic, while quietly behaving like a conspiracy theorist, filtering every piece of evidence through the assumption that disaster is the most likely outcome. The sixth sign arrives right at the edge of action, when doing the thing suddenly feels both urgent and impossible at once. You want to start the business, apply for the job, send the message, book the flight. But before any of that happens, a committee meeting opens inside your head. The optimistic version speaks. The pessimistic version interrupts. The embarrassed version demands another opinion. Nothing gets decided. Psychologist Barry Schwartz described a version of this in his 2004 book, The Paradox of Choice. More options often produce less action, not because people are lazy, but because every option adds one more future you could lose. The seventh sign is the easiest one to miss because it shows up in your body instead of your thoughts. You feel exhausted after thinking, not after running, not after lifting boxes, after sitting completely still. That happens because your nervous system doesn't fully separate an imagined threat from a real one. Your heart rate climbs. your muscles tighten, your breathing shifts, all in response to a danger that exists only in subtitles inside your own head. The body prepares for a tiger. The mind is just browsing possibilities. Once you notice these patterns, the obvious question becomes how to stop. Most people try to win the argument, fighting one thought with a better thought, and it rarely works because the overthinking brain loves a debate. A debate is just more thinking wearing a disguise. What works instead is changing the question. Not, is this thought true, but is this thought useful? A smoke alarm going off while something's actually burning is doing its job. A smoke alarm screaming every single afternoon for no reason isn't protecting anyone anymore. The goal was never silence. It was accuracy. There's a second test worth running too. Does the thought end in movement? Self-awareness usually finishes with an action, an apology, a decision, a boundary, a message finally sent. Overthinking usually finishes exactly where it started, in the chair, in the shower, in bed at 1 a.m. If a thought never changes your behavior, it's probably not protecting you from anything. It's just raising your stress level and calling it insight. There's something strange hiding underneath all of this. Children rarely worry about becoming the wrong person. Adults do it constantly, as if growing older quietly taught us that one mistake, one relationship, one missed opportunity could ruin an entire life. But lives almost never break in a single moment. They drift, which means they can drift back, too. The dangerous part was never making the wrong decision. It's spending so long trying to avoid the wrong life that you miss your actual one while imagining someone else's. Which what-if thought keeps showing up in your life, even after you've already answered it 100 times. Subscribe to Scribble Mind if you want psychology explained through the everyday mental habits that quietly steal your attention. Most prisons don't have walls. They have possibilities.